Hello, welcome to number 2 of the Covid-19 video series. So I'm going to follow up from the first video where I basically introduced English as a language, form of communication, where we used 3 competencies: interacting orally in English, reinvesting understanding, writing and producing text. And we concluded with the idea that all this communication is conveyed by using words. We said, yeah, language consists of words. Okay, of course there are other types of language, body language and so on, but the verbal language we're talking about, English, uses words. Starting point, okay? That's a pretty simple way of putting things. Me, Tarzan, you, Jane, okay, the message gets across. Ugh. But we've evolved, things are more sophisticated. We actually convey ideas, and ideas are better expressed in sentences. What are sentences? Well, they're words put together, right? Again, that's kind of overly simplifying things, but what is a sentence? You know it. It's a subject, a verb, and a complement. Something does something, right? Subject, verb, complement. So today I wanted to focus on how we structure sentences. Of course, each language, a thing that gets confusing from one language to another is the order of words. Now, for those who were interested in Latin or knew anything about Latin, the word order was not really that important. The endings the endings could determine what the function of the word was. But I'm getting off the subject a little bit. In French, well, word order is different from English. You know, they put the adjective after the noun instead of before the noun. In German, you stick the verb at the end of the sentence in many cases. So what do we do in English? And that's what I'm going to focus on today. Word order. How do we make a sentence in English? Now, you might find this kind of weird, but I'm going to start by talking about something we call auxiliaries. You think, what the heck? Well, what is an auxiliary? Why are you talking about that? You'll understand. You'll understand when you get older. No, you'll understand by the end of the video how all of this, hopefully, will make sense. Now, here I have an example of an auxiliary. On one of my keyboards, I've got little holes here. Some is for plugging in the pedal, plugging in a USB key, power, AC/DC. And there's this one thing here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's called auxiliary. Got it on a stereo, we've got it on all kinds of electronic equipment. What the heck is an auxiliary? Well, it's something extra. It's something outside of the basic stuff you're supposed to have. It's something added on. And in a language, an auxiliary, we add it on to a verb. And it kind of changes something about the verb, okay? Now there's a whole bunch of auxiliaries. And before I get into that, I'm going to back up a little bit because in a few moments I'm going to talk about questions. And when I was learning French, a eureka moment was when I learned the expression est-ce que. This was so amazing because you put est-ce que in front of anything and it becomes a question. Est-ce que tu vas être à l'heure? Est-ce que j'ai fait ça hier? Est-ce que j'aime ça? Est-ce que le Québec est une province ou un pays? Put est-ce que in front of an affirmative sentence, it becomes a question. That covers it all. In English, contrary to other points in English, for asking a question, it's a little more complicated. And basically, to ask a question, you need est-ce que. Now, how do you say est-ce que in English? And of course, I'll have a lot of you say do, right? I say, okay, that's a start. Maybe that's what your teacher told you in grade 1, so you could get started with something. But est-ce que is more complicated than just do. I think my other iPad just thought I said Siri. Anyway, est-ce que in English is an auxiliary. I hope I wrote that right. Auxiliary. Anyway, auxiliary. Again, excuse my writing. I say that all the time. Est-ce que is an auxiliary. So it's something, as I said, like on my keyboard, that you add onto the verb. So what are the different auxiliaries? Well, I'm going to be referring to my sentence survival kit, which you'll find in your ressources in the devoir section. And basically, it's a PowerPoint presentation that I put together, but unfortunately it doesn't work as a PowerPoint presentation in your iPad, so I'll just go page by page. And in the sentence survival kit, we talk about auxiliaries. So, on the third page, you'll find the different list of auxiliaries that we use. Basically, we've got have, be, can, could, might, may, should, would, will, shall. These are all auxiliaries. They're words that you put before a verb which changes the tense or maybe the sense of the verb. For example, if I wanted to say, I don't know, est-ce que tu aimes ça? I would say, do you like this? Because do is something I'd use in the present. Est-ce que tu as fini tes devoirs? Did you finish your homework last night? I would use did as est-ce que. Est-ce que je peux jouer aux cartes? Can I play cards? So the est-ce que is can. Est-ce que je pourrais sortir plus tard ce soir, maman? Could I stay out a little later tonight, mom? So the est-ce que now is could. Est-ce qu'il pourrait gagner s'il travaillait? Might he win if he works a little harder? Est-ce que is might here. Est-ce que je peux aller à la salle de bain? Now often a student will say, can I go to the bathroom? And I usually answer, yes, probably. But if you ask, may I go to the bathroom? I'll probably say, yes, you may, because I'm giving permission. So, puis-je, it's a little more polite. May I? So, may is the est-ce que pour puis-je. Est-ce que je devrais travailler fort? Should I work hard? Should means devrais. And in this case is a translation for est-ce que, if you have that conditional. Would. Would is another conditional. Well, would is the conditional. Stick would before a verb, you've got conditional. Huh? I go, je vais. I would go, j'irai. Huh? I would go if I had enough money. So, est-ce que tu irais si tu avais assez d'argent? Would you go if you had enough money? Would, in this case, is the est-ce que in the conditional. Will, it's in the future. Huh? Est-ce que je vais te voir en fin de semaine? Est-ce qu'on se voit en fin de semaine? Will we see each other next weekend? Est-ce que now is will. Shall, don't worry about that. That's the Queen. That's Shakespeare. That's a whole other can of worms. And of course the do, did, does. We're into other auxiliaries. But just to say that you should know your auxiliaries, and this will help you with the basic sentence structure. Okay, now let's turn the page on that. In this document, you'll notice I'm talking about the sentence survival kit, and basically when we have sentences, you've got three things you do when we're talking, right, or writing. You're affirming something, saying something in the affirmative, or you're saying something in the negative, or you're asking a question. That's it. Okay, thank you. Let's all go home. No, but that's basically it. When you speak a language, there's three types of sentences. Gets a little more complicated as far as the types of questions you can answer. But like with all rules, there are exceptions. So today I'm going to keep I'll say 9 times out of 10, maybe 95% of the time. I'm not good in math. What I'll explain to you today works. Okay. Now, for the symbols, I'm going to use the plus sign. Let's change colors, just get a little more exciting. Plus sign for an affirmative sentence. I'll use a negative sign for a negative sentence, of course. When we ask questions, there are 2 types of questions. There's a yes, no question. The answer is yes or the answer is no. I'm going to use this symbol, YN question mark. There's an information question where the answer is the complement. And I'll show you in a moment an example of that. And one that we often forget, there's an information question where the answer is the subject. Okay, now this looks like hieroglyphics to you. You ain't seen nothing yet. Anyway, now I'm going to use the symbols, which you'll find in your document. S for subject, V for verb, C complement, A auxiliary, and QW will be the question word. Now, let's stick all this stuff up here. Give you a chart. We'll get ESCA out of the way. ESCA is an auxiliary. And here's your survival kit. Sentences in English. This is something I call, or actually we, because I'll include Bill Stagg in that. Bill Stagg was a former colleague of mine, and he and I I think it's probably mostly his idea, or he came up with, anyway, I'll call it our idea, because I took part in it. Call it the system, okay? And the system is your basic survival kit in sentences. When you make an affirmative sentence, as we said a moment ago, you've got your, change colors, subject, verb, big black letters here, and complement. Or you could put an O for object, depending on what school you're thinking about. Subject, verb, complement is your basic affirmative sentence, okay? But sometimes things don't always go so well. We want to express things negatively. So we would have the subject followed by, okay, oh, excuse me, something I forgot to mention. Sometimes an affirmative sentence can have an auxiliary in it. So I'll put that, an A in parenthesis, to say it's a possibility. Yeah? You could say, I love English, for example. You could say, I can love English, I will love English, I should love English. That's the auxiliary. You could put to modify the verb a little, but the basic sentence is subject, verb, complement. Negative, okay? Here you have to use an auxiliary. So I'm not putting parentheses. You must have an auxiliary with not, okay? Then you have the verb, and finally the complement. That's how you make a negative sentence. Show you an example in a minute. Hold on. Yes, no question. This is a question you ask, and the answer is either you got it, yes or no. So, a yes, no question starts with an auxiliary. Okay, I'll put capital A because that's the way it is. So it's an auxiliary followed by the subject. So notice what happened here. Subject auxiliary switches. The auxiliary becomes the subject. They just switch positions, right? Auxiliary subject verb. And of course, it's a question, so it has to end with a question mark. Whoops. Let's put that a little further along. Complement. And then a question mark. Right? Now, there's an information question where you want to know information. Yeah, good. The only difference between an information question and a yes-no question in terms of structure is the same thing, but I add a question word. Okay? So the same thing, auxiliary, subject, verb, but I add a QW. Question word. We'll see tons of examples in a moment. Finally, information subject. Now, the information complement question wants the complement as the answer. Okay? So that's why I didn't write complement here, because the answer to this question will be the complement. You'll understand when we get to examples. When I want to know the subject of my sentence, the original subject, I would use the following structure. Now, take note. This is basically the same as this. The information question for the subject, same structure as the affirmative sentence. There's just one thing that changes. The subject is replaced by the question word. Okay? So, question word. I'll just double check to make sure I'm following my own rules. Followed by verb and the complement. Now here I include the complement because I don't want the complement as an answer. I want the subject as an answer. You'll see with the example. If there's an auxiliary in the affirmative, of course, we'll use that auxiliary in the affirmative here, in the question here. If there's no auxiliary here, of course, there's no auxiliary here. Okay, Morgan, what the heck are you talking about? Well, nothing better than an example. So we'll start with a student. Let's make up a student's name. I don't want to insult anybody, so I'll say Steve. I don't think I have any students named Steve this year. So if there is a Steve out there, well, I'm sorry, you're my example for today. Steve. Let's use another color. Red sounds good. Subject, Steve. Let's make it passionate. Loves English. Yeah, with a passion. That's why it's in red. Steve loves English. Okay? Subject, verb, complement. Now, let's put it in the negative. My subject, Steve, auxiliary. Okay, again, I'm skipping steps here. But just to note that for simple present, simple past, your est que has to be do, does, did. What? We'll get to that later. Steve loves. Oh, just a little parenthesis on that. Steve loves English. This is something that's simple for you guys, contrary to me when I was learning French. When I was learning French, I had to learn all the endings. Steve aime, I aime. But moi j'aime, okay, the ending doesn't change there. Tu aimes, oh, I have to put an S on it. Nous aimons, vous aimez, ils aiment, ENT. I had to memorize all those endings. I thought, oh my God, I'll never learn French. Easy for you in English. Look, I love English, you love English, they love English, we love English, but Steve loves English. Third person singular is the only thing that changes the verb. Put an S, the third person singular. For all the others, just leave the verb as it is. So here we have third person singular, and for the third person singular in the present, my auxiliary, est que, is does. DOES plus the not. So, does not or doesn't, contracted form. Verb, love English. Period. Now you're going to ask me, hey Morgan, what's going on? You said Steve loves English, and suddenly there's no S here. What the heck are you doing? I didn't invent it, but I'll tell you, there's an explanation. The S is now here. Steve does not love English. When I have the S here, I don't need it here. When you have does, drop the S otherwise. Now if it was I, there'd be nothing to change. I love English. I do not love English. You love English. You do not love English. Nothing changes. But with the S, take it off the verb, put it on the auxiliary, right? That's the negative. Steve aime l'anglais, Steve n'aime pas l'anglais. Now we want to ask the yes-no question. The answer is yes, or the answer is no. So we use the auxiliary. Auxiliary is does. D-O-E-S. Subject, Steve. Verb, love. Okay. So I put an S on that? Very good. No, I do not, because my S is here, so I don't need it here, right? Does Steve love English? Question mark. Okay. Now, like I said before, for an information question, the only difference is I put a question word on it. So this stuff will be all the same. Okay. Does Steve love? Absolutely no change. Does Steve love? Does Steve love? Say that 10 times. Can't do it. Anyway, I have to add a question word. Okay? Now, the answer to my question is the complement. Complement, the word is English. So the answer to my question is English. So I have to think, well, what's English? Is it a person, place, thing, time? It's a thing, kind of. So for a thing, the question word you need is what? Qu'est-ce que Steve aime? What does Steve love? Now, of course, I don't have a complement here. Why not? Exactly, you're right. The answer to my question is the complement. So what does Steve love? English. Steve loves English. Now there's this other question I told you about that we often forget about. It's where the information question is the answer to the information question is the subject. So what's the subject of the sentence? Scan. Hey, Steve. The answer to this question must be Steve. Okay? So, for my question word, Steve, is that a person, place, thing, time? It's Steve is person. Question word for person, qui, who. Yep, you in the car. Who? Now, forget about all this stuff, okay? What I said earlier, this is the same as my affirmative sentence, exactly the same. The only thing that changes is I replace the subject by the question word. So who loves English? In my writing, who loves English? Steve loves English. Steve loves English. There you go. Now, this is your survival kit for sentences in English. With this, you can basically say everything you want to say. Affirmative, negative, or questions. And, once you get this system into your head, you can play with it. Go jogging. I like that. When I learn languages, I like practicing sentences in my head when I'm jogging. I mean, some people have more exciting things to do. That's how I get my kicks. Anyway, let's just go a little further with this, just to kind of show you that you can use it in any circumstance, in any verb tense. Okay? We'll stick with the basic tenses for now. I'll get into the more complicated ones in another video. Let's stick it into the past. Steve aimait l'anglais. Avant d'avoir Morgan comme prof. Steve, in the past, he had a very interesting English teacher who was very stimulating, had lots of ideas, and then, bang, he ended up in my class. So he doesn't like English anymore, but in the past, well, he loved English. Simple past. Again, there's irregular verbs and all that, but basic way to put a verb in the past, stick ed on the end, right? Steve loved English. What happened? I changed teachers, changed schools, I don't know, had a girlfriend, an English girlfriend, broke up with him, dumped him, so he doesn't like English anymore. But in the past, he loved English. Now, watch what happens. The only thing that changes is the auxiliary. Everything else stays the same. Steve loved English. Steve n'aimait pas l'anglais. Steve did not love English, or didn't. Contraction if you wish. Now, again, Morgan, what's going on? How come the ED disappeared? Well, same thing as we did a moment ago. Remember that S? You can only have one S. It's either on the auxiliary or the verb. Well, here again, ED represents the past. Did goes to the past. Est-ce que il a aimé? Did he love English? So did is in the past. So if it's in the past, the verb comes back to its basic form. Okay, so I drop that ED. Steve did not love English. Next step, a yes/no question. The only thing you change is not auxiliary. Did Steve love English? Well, he seemed to. He kept coming to class. Now he doesn't come anymore. But anyway, did Steve love English? Est-ce que Steve aimait l'anglais? I'm asking the question in the past. The answer, yes or no. Again, next step, information question where the complement is the answer. Just change the auxiliary. That's all you change is the auxiliary. Qu'est-ce que Steve aimait? Qu'est-ce qu'il a aimé? What did Steve love? Just change the auxiliary. Verb, staying the same. So the answer to my question, what did Steve love? The complement is English. Steve loved English. There's the answer is the complement. Finally, subject is the answer of my information question. Who? It's a guy. Same answer. The only thing I change here is the verb tense. Qui a aimé l'anglais? Steve aimait l'anglais. Qui a aimé l'anglais? Again, as I say, the information question for the subject, it has exactly the same form as the affirmative sentence. Who loved English? Steve loved English. And to wrap up this discussion, we'll just throw in another verb tense here. Simple verb tense. Stick it in the future. Let's go back to the future. Steve va aimer l'anglais. He doesn't like my class right now, but next year he'll be in Cégep maybe, or he'll be with another teacher who might be a little more interesting than me. So we're going to stick it in the future. Steve va aimer l'anglais. Steve aimera l'anglais. And in English, to express the future, we use the auxiliary will. Okay. Here's that auxiliary in parentheses. We don't always have an auxiliary. When we have it, we put it before the verb. The auxiliary, remember that? That's the thing you stick on the verb to change the sense. Or wherever it's, anyway. So Steve will love English. Again, going through the system, the only thing that changes is the auxiliary. You got it. You win another car. The cars are just piling up in the garage. Steve will love English. Steve n'aimera pas l'anglais. Maybe the teacher's a nasty person next year waiting for him, so he's not going to like English anymore. So Steve will not love English. I just changed the auxiliary. I'm in the future, so I'm using the same auxiliary throughout. Steve will love English. Steve will not love English. Or you could use the contracted form, won't. W-O-N apostrophe T. Steve n'aimera pas l'anglais. Si, whatever. Est-ce que Steve va aimer l'anglais? Oui ou no? Here we're putting this a yes-no question in the future. Just change the auxiliary. Will Steve love English? I don't know. I'd have to pay him. Information question, the answer is the complement. Just change the auxiliary. It's that simple. Child's play. Qu'est-ce que Steve va aimer? What will Steve love? Steve will love? Yeah, you got it. English. Steve will love English. And finally, of course, who? And my information question with the subject, exactly the same as the affirmative sentence, right? Who will love English? Who will love English? So there you go. The system in simple present, simple past, and simple future. This is a drill, okay? You're running, okay? Let's put it in simple present. Steve loves English. Steve does not love English. Does Steve love English? What does Steve love? Who loves English? Put it in the simple past. Steve loved English. Steve did not love English. Did Steve love English? What did Steve love? Who loved English? Put it in the future. Steve will love English. Steve will not love English. Will Steve love English? What will Steve love? Who will love English? Put it in the present perfect. I'll just throw this curve to you. Steve has loved English. Has Steve loved English? Steve has loved English. Steve has not loved English. Has Steve loved English? What has Steve loved? Who has loved English? Okay. You could put it in a continuous form. Think of McDonald's. Now, you're not supposed to use love in a present continuous, but hey, I'm a rebel. I'm loving it. You've heard of it, right? So Steve is loving it. Steve is not loving it. Is Steve loving it? What is Steve loving? Who is loving it? Etc. So, anyway, that's your survival kit. Try it out. Go jogging in the snow. It's March 30th. I think I see 30 centimeters of snow out there. Can't take it any longer. And in the following video, I'll get into verb tense explanation. So, have a good day. Keep practicing.